Hi everyone, welcome back to Box Delights. Today we're playing Bias Mesofauna. We're going to play the solo game, so let's dive straight into it without any further ado. We're going to be competing to create the most victorious Mesofauna. Meso means middle, alright? So we're not microbes, we're not big animals, we are insects, invertebrates, about 500 million years ago. We're going to be competing based on the success of our species, so its population, how many pheromones they have, so how well developed our species are. Okay, and we're also going to score some victory points. They're called fossil tokens. Now in the solo game, we've got 7 of these. When these 7 tokens run out, then the game immediately ends. That's our end game trigger, so look out for that. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create this supercontinent. So our supercontinent consists in a solo game of 4 out of these 8 tiles. Okay, each has 3 hexes, they're biomes. Okay, and then they can be grasslands, swamps, or lakes. Around the edge of each is a mountain range, and then there's these fault lines where different plates can crash together. Now in the game there's 3 modes of play. There's cocoon, caterpillar, and there's butterfly. Okay, so caterpillar is the simplest, then cocoon is like the regular, like the middle game, and then butterfly is the more complex game, and in the solo you have to play butterfly. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Right, so let's draw 4 of these tiles. Let's create this supercontinent first off. I'm going to draw these tiles one at a time, and as you draw them, you can decide which side you want. And we want to just make sure that they're with this red cube northwards. Okay, so let's do that. Right, we'll draw them one at a time. We'll create this as we go along. So we've got 2 swamps, a lake. It doesn't matter where we place them, it's entirely up to us how we want this land to build up, as long as they're touching and as long as they're all of the same orientation. As we play the game, these lands will, or these plates will separate and come together, driven by events. Right, we'll see that as it happens. Let's put another lake down, shall we? Wow, it doesn't matter. Let's just go like this. Okay, there's our supercontinent. We're going to take our starting species. This is, I've chosen the pink. All right, this is our species card. We place it this way around, and there's 10 little meeples on here. They're called creeples. Right, they're creature meeples, if you like. So creeples is how they'll be referred to, and this is called our archetype species. Okay? We've got 5 more species, which you'll see as we get into the game. But this is our archetype. We're playing pink. Just pick a colour randomly. These are insects. And our solo opponent is called the queen bee. Again, it doesn't matter which colour you choose, but there they are. They're the exoskeleton arthropods. All right. That's queen bee. And she starts with one of her archetype species out here on the map, and it says she starts in the lowest elevation. It has to be a non-lake as well. All right. So these fire brats, they're called fire brats for queen bee. They start in a non-lake biome of the lowest elevation. I'm going to use these little gemstones. They don't come with the game, but these are just to help me with the video to explain candidate biomes, candidate hexes. So lowest elevation. This biome here has 1 mountain range along the side. That has an elevation of 1. This biome here has 2 sides of mountains. That has an elevation of 2. This biome here has no mountains on it. That has an elevation of 0. So we're looking for 0 elevation biomes. There's one here, and I think that's probably it. These all have mountains. I chose ones with mountains. The only ones that don't are these lakes. Okay, and these fire brats can't live on lakes. They're land animals. So that's our candidate, and that's where she's going to start. Here in these swamps. Now each biome has an upper and a lower area. They're called trophic levels. Okay, so the upper is for carnivores, the lower is for herbivores. All our little creepers start as herbivores. Okay, herbivores are more successful. You want herbivores when you can get them. So they start here in the herbivore section. Ignore all these icons in the middle. That's for if you're playing a combined game. You could combine Mesofauna with Megafauna. So these are your larger creatures. All right, this is Megafauna 2nd edition. You can play a combined game, so that's what these icons in the middle. We'll look at the numbers from time to time, but that's about it. All right, so there we go. There's Queen Bee's first archetype. Every species out on the map scores them a point. All right, so that's 1 point there, grey, I'm pink. They've got a point already. Okay. We're probably heading up around this area in terms of points. Okay, we'll see as the game goes on. Remember, the trigger for game end is those fossils disappearing. Fossils will be awarded by event cards, and we'll look at that in a moment. Now she places a second, so everyone places 2 creepers during setup, so that's just where their starting one is. She wants to place it in an adjacent craton. They're called cratons. Each tile is called a craton. All right, each hex is a biome on a craton. So her preference is to go to an adjacent craton. So she could have gone here. She could have gone here. All right. So they're going to be 2 adjacent, but she prefers a separate craton. So we'll give priority to either of those 2. Then she'll favour lowest elevation. This tile has an elevation of 2. This one has an elevation of 1. So she's going in this one here. All right. There we go. That's her 2 starting archetype creepers. Now we can choose where to place our 2. So again, anywhere on the map, non-lake, because we don't have swimming insects. We've got this little scale insect here. That's our archetype. As long as they're adjacent, it doesn't matter where they go. Well, I like the idea of a little bit of conflict. So why don't we go here and here, right next to them. Now I could, if I wanted to, I could place them in the same hex, but if I do that, they'll have to become carnivores feeding on those, which is perfectly fine, absolutely fine. The problem is carnivores are slightly more vulnerable than herbivores. So if I do that, I've kind of started off with a little bit of a disadvantage. So we'll go here, we'll see how the game develops. Okay, in fact, I might just go up here. Let's give ourselves a little bit of room away from the Queen Bee. Right, we've got to set up our markets as well. So as it goes, we're both starting the game on 2 points each because we've both got two creepers out here. And there's a little reminder. So living creepers on the map, connected pair of pheromones, I'll show you that in a bit, and then collected fossil tokens. All right, there's 7, like I say, 7 between us. Right, how do we build our species? Well, we start off with this very simple archetype species each. But these guys can mutate and get adaptations, and then they can speciate, create more species. Okay, they can populate, they can breed and spread out. Right, we'll see all that stuff as we go along. How we develop our species is via these cards. Give that a quick shuffle. There's a 10-card display, 2 rows of 5 cards. You've got red, yellow cards at the top, blue, green cards down the bottom. They each give different types of mutations. Okay. They're double-sided. Okay. They've got 2 vertical sides on the rear, 1 mutation side on the front. So we want them front side up like so. And these are market spots, just like a PAX game, and those have a cost associated with them, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. All right. Same for the green, blue. Whether it's green, blue, red or yellow determines the type of organs that we're mutating, that we're adapting with. Yellow are circulatory or respiratory organs, useful for high metabolism, pollination. Red represents sense organs, useful for detecting and incapacitating prey. Green are digestive organs, useful for processing food. And then blue are for sex and reproduction. Okay. There's also white, which could appear on any of these cards, which are about metamorphosis. We'll talk about that if and when it happens. All right. The rules are actually pretty simple for this game. There's no terribly complicated rules. There we go. We've finished our setup. Let's begin. So Queen B starts, and there is a nice little player aid here. Now she starts her first turn a little bit different to standard. So the setup instructions tell us on her first turn, she's going to start by grabbing a card from the display here, and she's looking for the cheapest thorax. Each insect has got a head, a thorax, and a tail or abdomen. Okay, so head, thorax, abdomen. One head, one abdomen, but in between any number of thoraxes. Okay, 0 or more. Okay, first thing she's going to do is start building up her species, specialising with mutations, looking for the cheapest. So cheapest here in the 0 spot to the left, the cheapest thorax. It just so happens there's one here. If you look at the top part, you can see this is a head, this is a abdomen, or tail, okay, abdomen, and this is a thorax, the bit in the middle. Okay, so head would have this bit coloured, thorax has the middle bit coloured, and the abdomen, the tail end, like this, has this bit coloured. So this is actually one of two things. It can either be a tail or an abdomen or a thorax. Now, you'll also see these silhouettes. What these silhouettes mean is that it'll actually create a new species if it takes this mutation. Okay, so we're going to ignore these for now. It's looking just for a thorax that doesn't give it a new species. Like this, it's got a head and an abdomen. There's no species silhouette, right? This one has got a species silhouette, though it's got a choice. Okay, so it could take this card without speciating. Right, where's the next thorax? Well, there's a thorax here, so they're going to take this one here. This is the cheapest non-speciating, doesn't have another species silhouette. Right, let me just show you. Here's one of their wooden meeples from a different species, or creeples rather. Right, so we're not going to take that one. She's going to take this one, the cheapest thorax that doesn't have a species silhouette on it. Right, that's the one they're taking. Irreversible scent glands. So here it is. Now we're going to place this to the left of her species card. This is a mutation. Now on this card, there's this plus in a square box. That says it adds an organ. These square cubes are organs. Right? They get this green cube. At the moment, this mutation is not inheritable. It's not like a permanent fixture on this species. If this thing was speciate and evolve into new species, this wouldn't be carried forward. This green cube, this green organ. So grabbing a card is called mutating, but then and there's another action called a promote action. A promote action turns this organ into what's called a basal organ. Okay, I'll show you how this works. Now, why I'm telling you this now is every time the queen bee's got an advantage, right? It's not as bright as us, so it gets a little advantage. His advantage is, rather than have to do mutate and promote as two separate actions, it kind of wraps them up in one. Okay, so it mutates and promotes all in one go. So every time it takes a card, it promotes it straight away. And the act of promoting means we take this cube and we place it here as a basal organ. Okay, this fire brat now has this extra irreversible scent gland, and that's like a permanent fixture. And we flip this card over. Every time you flip this card over, you choose a side. It can either act as a head, like this, or it can act as a thorax, like this. Promoting this mutation has effectively allowed it to have a permanent change to its biology. Now we can choose which orientation. During setup we get to choose. Do we want it to go this way up, and this will be osmeterium, or do we want it to have a prothoracic gland that regulate molting? Interesting. Or we can give it this venomous osmeterium, which is like a repellent. Okay, so I think we'll give it this endocrine gland, a prothoracic gland, and you slide it under like this. Okay, these blue icons here represent pheromones. If it gets another body part and places it here and completes that pheromone, that gives it a victory point. But you notice too that promoting it, right, so it's inherited this irreversible scent gland, this green organ, this green cube, and it's part of the basal species now. So every species that gets born will have one of these green cubes, but it's also now promoted this new mutation, which is the prothoracic gland, which gives it a blue cube. Blue cubes represent its ability to reproduce. If I wanted to, I could have chosen this side and given it venom. This venom icon means it becomes venomous. Venomous means it can eat any other type of creature. At the moment, it can only eat other creatures of the same shape or the archetype species. So the archetype species is always food for everyone else. Okay, so what that means is if I've got like a flying insect, they can only eat other flying insects, right? A burrowing insect can only eat other burrowing insects. A flying insect couldn't eat a burrowing insect. They're not sharing the same habitat. They can't catch each other. Make sense? So you can eat other creatures of the same shape or the archetype. The archetype is food for everybody. Then there is a cannibalism rule. You can't eat the same shape of the same colour. You can't eat creatures of your own kind. So if you're a flying creature, you can only eat other flying creatures, not your own flying creatures. Cool. Right, there we go. So we've gone through setup. They've chosen their first mutation. They've promoted it. They've got a couple of new organs on their species. We fill the gap here. So we slide everything left and fill the gap. All right. So this is kind of like a conveyor belt of mutations that we can feed from. If one of these decks runs out, by the way, that also triggers the game end, even if we haven't gotten through all the fossils, but we've kind of run out of time, run out of cards. All right, then the final piece of setup is that the queen bee will now populate. Okay, it's a third type of action. So we've seen mutate, we've seen promote. Now they're going to populate. What means is their species are going to spread out. Okay, how do they do this? First, we pick a mother out of the two that creeples that she has on the map. So again, I'm going to use my gemstones here as little tokens to show you the candidates. So there's two candidates. Okay, 1, 2. The way you do this is you say which one of these mothers is the most stressed. The most stressed is the one on a biome, remember a hex, that is most populated. Right, they're both equally populated, just one creeple each. If there were more creeples here, they'd be more stressed and they'd become the candidate. Next, the highest elevation. Higher elevation, the more stressed they are. This has 0 mountains. This has 1 mountain. This is at elevation 1. So this mother here, this creeple here is more elevated, is more stressed than that one. That becomes the mother. Next, we think how many babies are they going to have? Okay, how many daughters? We say mother and daughter in this game. It's 1 plus the number of blue cubes they have on their species. Remember, blue is their ability to reproduce. So 1 plus 1 cube, 2. She's going to have 2 daughters. She's looking for an adjacent biome. She wants to go, again, least stressful. So the most stressful would be most populated. So she's looking for an adjacent biome. All right, so these are 3 biomes adjacent to mother. Okay. Can't go on lakes because these aren't swimmers. This one is more populated than this one. That leaves this one hex. So first daughter is going here. Cool. Now they do what's called daisy chain. The next daughter is not going to be a child of this mother, it's going to be a child of this one, right? So this one's birthed this one, and this one will birth one, and however many we have, they're called a daisy chain. So where's this one going to go? Same rules, they can't go to lakes, they can go in adjacent spots. So adjacent spots would be here, 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 or here, not these lakes. Okay. This is what's called habitability, right? These creatures cannot inhabit that biome. Remember too, you can't have two creepers in the same location, all right? So if this creeper came in here as a herbivore, it couldn't, it would have to move up into the carnivore spot, and you can't cannibalize your own creepers, okay? Same shape, same color. So these are not candidates either. Okay? They can't go in here and feed off their own. So it's going to be this one or this one. They're both the most populated. Which one's got the lowest elevation? That's got elevation 2, that's got elevation 1. They're coming in here. Okay, that's where they're going to go. Now these two herbivores are competing. They're having a contest. You can't have two creepers in the same spot. One of them has to get kicked out. And how do we determine which one stays? We see which one has, there's a little reminder here, there's a green cube. Which one of these two has the most green cubes? Which one, remember, green cubes represent digestive organs, their ability to consume the plants in the environment. That will be the most successful. I've just got my starting species card. I've not mutated at all yet. I've got no green organs. Well, they've already done that. They've mutated once. They've got one green organ. So they're most successful. They're going to kick us out. If we don't die, all it means is we have to do what's called a trophic shift. We have to move up into the carnivore spot. Our species here is a little bit more vulnerable because it's a carnivore. He's relying on this other species. Now, is this a valid food? Remember, archetype species are always valid food for every other type of creature. And actually, it doesn't matter because you can always eat creatures of the same shape as you. Right, they're a different colour. So we're good both ways. Right, so this carnivore's fine. My guy's fine, he still survives, but he's been pushed up into the carnivore spot. He's vulnerable, of course, because he's relying on another food source now. You can never move down from carnivore to herbivore. You can only ever move up. All right, so if this food ever goes for some reason, that guy's going to die. Okay, cool. Right, let's do a quick adjustment on the points because they've got 2 more creepers on the map. They're up to 4 points. We're still on 2. All right, we didn't lose any. We're still on 2. So it's 2 versus 4. All right, that's it. That's that is it, honestly. That's their first turn done. All right, and they've shown us the 3 actions. Mutate, promote, populate. Okay. There are other actions. So there's a handy guide here. So this is our sequence of guide. The turn's going to go to us now. We can mutate, promote, populate. There's an action called speciate, so we can create a new species. And there's also one called neoteny, which is to remove an organ. And then there's also a zombie action. We'll talk about that if and when we get there. All right, that's setup done. So it's a little bit of an unusual first turn, but the game proper now starts with us. And we're probably going to try to mutate a little bit. Let's go off to the market and have a look. Now, remember I said these cards all have a cost. We don't pay money, we haven't got a currency in this game, but our ability to buy cards is determined by the number of unborn that we have. We've got 8 unborn sitting here right now. We start with 10, 2 are up here on the map, 8 unborn. That is effectively our budget. All right, we've got 8 unborn, that means we can buy a card up to and costing 8, which means at the start of the game we can buy anything in a 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. We can buy any of these cards, and we can buy one card either from the top row or the bottom row, and we're thinking about what type of organs do we want. Now, if we want to compete for this vegetation, then we're going to need some green organs, right? So there's some green ones here. This one's quite good. It's got 2 blue, which increases our ability to populate and spread out. Red ones will mean we'll be good at being a carnivore, so we're taking a more aggressive stance. And yellow makes us good pollinators. We can go and feed on flowers, and that might be an even better way of competing in this environment. Now, I kind of like the look of this one. It helps us populate. We get 2 blue organs, but it's also got this soldier caste, which adds a yellow organ. Okay, our ability to go and gather pollen. So that one might be quite good. The other thing to be aware of is as we're building out our species, so we mutate and we promote and we're adding body parts to our insect. Maybe we want a head, a thorax and an abdomen. If we have all 3, that means we become what's called eusocial, and eusocial means we're less vulnerable to extinction. We're able to survive what are called mutagen events, where species that haven't kind of evolved enough or properly or in the right way will potentially become extinct. Let's take this one. Let's get some blue. This one gives blue and yellow. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I am tempted by green. We do want to be able to compete. I'm going to stick with this. Go with my gut. So I'm going to take this mutation. It's called Meiotic contests. Okay, so we're going to put this on our scale insect. So it goes to the left, and that's our action. We get 1 action. This is a disadvantage. So the time it takes us to mutate and promote, that's 2 actions, 2 turns. The queen bee have already pushed on and have mutated and promoted twice, potentially. Right, that completes our turn. We've done our action. It's that simple. You do your action, you end your turn. Alright, let's refill the market. Okay, right. If we reveal a card that has event written on it, right, so all this stuff above is about mutations and promoting new organs and so on. Some of these cards have an event thing at the bottom, so we'll ignore all the rest. But if you reveal a card on one of these 2 decks, remember these aren't available for purchase, but they're the cards that are coming. If you reveal a card on top of this deck that has an event on it, then you have to perform that event. This is part of the more advanced game. This is the Kimberlite Field Eruption event, and it's got icons on here, and we have a handy reference chart. So on the back of Sequence of Play, there's an event chart. And we follow them from left to right, and it says, the first one is a population fossil award. The player with the most living creeples takes a fossil. They've got 4, we've got 2. Queen bee takes a fossil. Right, so they're another point up. They're on 5 points. Remember, number of creeples, pairs of pheromones, and fossil tokens give them points. And that's 1 spot closer to game end. The game in solo is not terribly long as it goes. Alright, next is a continental drift event. And if we look at this event, it's got a number 3 in it. We're looking at these tiles. There's number 3, right? So this is going to have some kind of eruption that's caused this continent to drift from the others. So the timescales here are huge. This is its fault line. Remember these little arrows. If any of these sides are joined to another craton, which they are here, it's joined to the main continent here, then it's what's called sutured. It's going to break off, and it's potentially bringing some of the other cratons with it too. And what you do is you look along its mountain range. Is anyone joined to its mountain range? No, they're not. But if they were, they would break off with it. So as it goes, it's going to break off alone, and it becomes a separate landmass. Right? It doesn't matter where we place them. All you know is this is now a separate landmass. Okay, our poor little guy here is adrift from this one. Right, so he can't be wandering over now and populating here. He's separated up on a little continent of its own. Okay, that's it. That's this event complete. Done. All right, back to Queen Bee. So now Queen Bee is going to follow her regular turn. And again, we have a reference card for this. First thing she does is choose the phasing species. Okay, So potentially she's got more than one species here, but as it goes, she's got one. It's this one. So I'll place a little gem here to remind us. That's our phasing species. Okay. So everything we do is in respect to her fire brats. Next, she does a speciation roll. She's going to roll 1d8. There's a whole bunch of d8s. We're going to need 4 of them for the solo game. But we roll 1 of them. At the moment she's got 1 species. If we roll a d8, if we roll greater than the number of species she has, then she will speciate. So anything higher than a 1, she's going to speciate. She's going to look to create a new species. So if we roll a 1, that won't happen. Anything other than that, it will happen. So chances are she's going to try and speciate now. We rolled a 4. Okay, so she will speciate. What that means is we're going to look to the market. And again, we're going to look cheapest first. It's called the stingy rule. She's looking in the cheapest spot for a mutation that gives her one of these silhouettes of a creeple silhouette, which allows her to speciate. And here it is, right in the leftmost spot is this chitin cuticle, which actually has 2 silhouettes. It allows it to create a diving species or an armoured species. Right, so she's going to take this mutation. Okay, that's the cheapest. If there wasn't one here, she'd skip and she'd move on. All right, she'd do a different action. She'd also skip this if this was the last of her phasing species. Okay, because what's going to happen is when we speciate, we replace one of these with a new species, and you can't ever replace her last one because that would make them go extinct. All right, so let's start with mutate. Remember, the mutate action is you place the card off to the left. We grab organs for this card. So for the chitin cuticle, she gets another green cube. Then we promote straight away because she's queen bee. All right, she has that special mutate, promote all in one. So these come off and go on here as basal organs. That's now a permanent organ in her species. We flip it over. Okay, and now we have to choose an orientation. We've also got to determine its mother. Just like when they populated, it's going to be the one, whichever of their 4 is the most stressed. Now, stress, remember, was the most populous. At the moment, it's this fella here. Okay, there's only 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. After that would be highest elevation, so that would be this one. Okay, that's highest elevation. But that's the mother. So we can choose. Do we want her to take the diving elytra, which is a swimming species, which will allow her to move across lakes, or do we want her to have the armoured elytra? The armoured one is just a species that can't be eaten by anything other than other armoured. Let's go with that. Okay, it's our choice. So we take her next species card, which happens to be the armoured spiny caterpillar with its, and this time it's got 7 creeples on here. This one had 10, this one's only got 7. Now this thing is going to inherit all the basal organs from its parent, okay, its ancestry, which was 2 green cubes. This blue one doesn't count, that's not a basal organ. Okay, these 2 green cubes, so anything on this card here comes down as inherited organs. So our new spiny caterpillar, or the queen's bee spiny caterpillar, gets 2 green cubes. It's really good at munching away on plants. So we've got another species to compete with. Okay, so we'll take one of its creeples. It's going to replace its mother. One of these has died out and mutated and turned into and speciated into this thing, the spiny caterpillar. Right, it looks a little bit like it. It's not quite the same. It doesn't have this organ, but it has these. Okay, so this mother is killed and replaced with this spiny caterpillar. Now this has done something else because this guy can't feed on this guy. It's a different shape. So this carnivore is now going to die out as well. Do you see how vulnerable carnivores are? The sacrificial mother goes back to the archetype. We lose our archetype, it goes back as an unborn. Now we're in a delicate situation because we've only got one creeple left on the map. Our score is only 1. Okay. Once they've placed their new species, the next thing they're going to do is populate. Remember, they populate with 1 plus the number of blue cubes. This new species doesn't have any blue cubes. This one does, but it didn't inherit it. It only inherited the basal organs. So 1 plus blue is just 1. So 1 unborn is going to come out and find a place to live. And the law of agoraphobia says they're going to look for the least populous biome adjacent to mother, which is this one. And they're going to go here. Right? That has a grey, this has a grey, this one doesn't. They're going here in the herbivore spot. Right? And they've got another population, they're up to 6 points. The queen bee in solo, she does work pretty quickly, but it will start to slow down. Incidentally, we should have a couple of blue cubes on there. I forgot to